Hello and welcome to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. My name is Felix.
Felix, Andy Green here. How you going?
Pretty good. I've had had a fair bit of coffee today, so I'm feeling energetic.
What a coincidence. I too am well caffeinated, which makes sense given who we have joining us today, Felix. Jonathan Ferrer from Brew Watches. You know Brew Watches?
Oh, they've yes. That chronograph has got me sort of hitting the add to cart button in my
A
mind.
little bit tingly.
Yeah.
It's funny. I met Jonathan. Jonathan was, I think, the first guy to recognize me off of Instagram in the
Whoa.
watch world.
Humble brag
which
alert.
is not even like it was 2015 or something, and I was at the Warner Wind Up Fair, and he was like, "Oh, you're Andy Green." And I was back with, like, those early community days where you kind of followed 1,000 people, and everyone sort of knew each other. And every time a micro brand popped up, you took note. So he's a lovely guy who I've known personally for quite some time now.
6 years, give or take.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. And I mean, I was in New York. Yeah, I think it was 2015.
Yep. That's great, Andy. We should probably chat to him in a minute and talk about what he's been up to since
It's been a minute.
Met. Yeah.
A lot.
I've been doing some stuff, Andy. I don't know if you want to know what I've been up to.
Tell me.
Well, this is revolution focused chat because I've been doing a bit of the old revolution work recently. Got a heap of deadlines, as you well know. But a story that I wrote, sort of like a bit of a new, I'm not going to say it's a new concept, but it's like a new sort of column, a regular story that I'll be writing over there, went up, which has the title Forgotten Heroes.
Okay.
This one is talking about the Drive Ducati app. Now, I don't know if you can work this out from just the title, but the concept of this is watches that everyone really loved when they first came out, like people were all over it, like, this is great, this is the next big thing, and then kind of just disappeared from public consciousness a little bit. Like another great example is Tudor's North Flag. You know what I mean? Like,
what happened to it? What happened to the North Flag?
It got overshadowed by the Black Bay. But the real question here is what happened to the Drive Ducati Air? And I thought going into the story that it was just going to be, it just didn't kick off, commercially. But the reason it didn't kick off made a lot of sense because it was released in, I'm going to say 2016. And within a year, Cartier had a change of leadership, and they had a new CEO, and they had a new sort of strategic direction. And that was about to stop doing all sorts of watches. So this is around the time that they stopped doing, that sort of the fine watchmaking with all the tourbillons and all that really super complicated stuff. It's sort of around the time that they started introducing the new Privé collection. And they sort of said, we're going to focus on feminine watchmaking, we're going to focus on the classics, and we're going to focus on these sort of key pillars. We're going to refine our watchmaking offering, and we're not going to try and focus on just watches for men. Like, they dropped the diver, and this is where the Drive. So it was just poor timing in a way. Like, it's a great design, a great watch that, happened to be released just as they changed their focus. So it's a good story. I had fun researching it. And another story I've had fun researching is upcoming one. Here's the goss early. I've been chatting to a gentleman by the name of Alain Silberstein. Do you know who he is?
That name sounds very familiar.
Yeah. So if you think of colourful, over-the-top watches from the 80s and 90s with smiley faces and,
quirky hands,
wibbly hands, he's your guy. And recently he's been in the news because he has partnered with MB&F a few times, and more recently Louis Arar.
That's right.
Had like a fairly well-priced, like 2-3K watch, limited edition, super hot, that just disappeared in minutes. And yeah, I had a chat to him, sort of, got a bit of his life story and where he's come from and where he's going, and really can't wait to put that one together. So, I can't link that up because I got to write it, but, stay tuned. What about you, Andy? What have you been doing?
I did a little bit of writing as well for our friends at Kennedy. The report, they call it. I did an article called 6 Watches Perfect for Celebrating the Moon This Mid-Autumn Festival.
Oh, nice.
Any guesses around the nature of the list?
Watches worn by astronauts.
Moon phases.
Oh, that makes much more sense.
A little bit more sense.
So what is the
IWC to JLC to
yeah?
Piaget.
Do you
Great
like the
little
moon phase? Are you a fan
list.
of the old moon phase?
I mean, I love the look that it adds to a dial.
Mm-hmm.
I've never owned a moon phase. It's a little bit expensive, and I don't know that I need that function in my life. But
You don't track the tides regularly.
no, I don't. I don't track tides. But cool feature nonetheless.
Very
Impressive
romantic,
as well.
I think. I always think it's the most romantic of the complications. The moon
They do
phase.
pretty up a dial.
Yeah.
They do. You know what? Sapaneva moon phase would be the move for me. Very cool. Very cool way to do it.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. What else have you been up to?
Not so long ago, I got my GBHG voting in for the sort of first round. So, as everyone's now seen the shortlist or finalist, whatever they call it.
So you're in the academy, which is sort of the broad
the pool,
the pool of the who's who of the watch world.
Exactly. So we selected that bunch that made it through, and then it's sort of another round of voting, which is cool. What else? So you're in our WhatsApp group with that secret watch brand that we're doing this limited edition timepiece with, Felix.
I can't say anything else, or we'll be NDA'd.
I know we're getting pretty close. So we had some dials coming through. Hands are on the way. We've got the case back, I think, sorted as well. Case is sorted. We can't be far off.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean,
dials look good though.
Touching wood that nothing catastrophic happens. I mean, that's always a risk given this pandemic situation. But we've seen some stuff, and I liked. We got some little happy snaps of where bits are being made in pristine Swiss valleys.
Yes, with some neighbours that look very familiar.
Indeed.
Right by the Rolex factory, which is exciting. Watch this space, as we love and hate to say. All right, well, I think without further ado, grab a coffee.
Sit down for a brew.
It's time to get Jonathan Ferrer from Brew Watches on.
Nice.
Fantastic. Today's guest is Jonathan Ferrer, founder of American independent micro brand Brew Watches. Brew Watches have consistently grown from strength to strength over the past 6-7 years with a design that is heavily focused on coffee, and it's something that I can certainly get around, especially at the moment. Jonathan, welcome to OT the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate you guys having me today.
It's our pleasure. Quick question off the bat. How do you take your coffee?
Always black. You want to be able to get that true espresso taste. So as a baseline, always just black espresso with me.
I love it. Same here. Felix?
How do I take my coffee? I take it generally like a filter these days because we're at home. I don't have espresso at home.
Black coffee all round. Well, speaking of, Jonathan, the Brew Watches collection is designed to kind of, celebrate that coffee culture and experiences. What's been your most experience so far with Brew Watches?
I would say like my experience overall with brew or just in general through it.
Either or.
You know what it is? This was never, I always tell people, it was never supposed to be a business. It was supposed to be a passion project on the side. I was literally sketching watches in the cafe for other watch brands at the time. Because it was like a studio, so to speak, where I could work there, meet friends, you get your caffeine fix and you can enjoy yourself, and it's a good environment. And I think through the years of doing this for others, I said to myself, if I was to work on something personal for myself that would kind of reflect my own personality, sure, but would also allow others to connect, what would that be? And you go through the list, race car, astronaut, and I said to myself, I took a glance around, and it's literally this. Took a glance around and I said, the cafe is something special. There's something here that everybody is drawn to. It's not just the caffeinated drinks, but the environment and the people. If I could just kind of ball that up into a philosophy and then inspiration for a watch, maybe there would be something there. And it's been amazing. And it was always supposed to be something for enjoyment, not even business. As of course, time goes on, it grows, but I still find that same enjoyment where I could say, pending COVID, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get an espresso, and I'd love to meet with whoever it is that day, that week. And it's still like that charm that kind of started it all. And I'm glad it hasn't disappeared at all. If anything, it's strengthened. And it's, I would say, good roots that I've been fortunate to have as a philosophy. for the brand.
Yeah, I love that, and I remember meeting you back in 2015, New York, at the Worn and Wound Wind Up event or fair or whatever it was. So that must have been the year that you started Brew Watches as a bit of a side hobby. How old were you at the time, and sort of, I guess, what made you take that leap into starting a brand?
Yeah. So I was 24, 25 years old at the time, still
Mm-hmm.
fresh out of college. And I felt this almost invincibility. Like I felt so strong and confident with nothing to lose. If anything, it was more like I just wanted to feel, whether it was success, failure, to put a product or a design of my own out there into the world. Because prior to that, I worked for other companies, internships, and watch companies. But when you design something, you put it out into the commercial world. Your name is not on it. You're not connected. It's just out into the stream, and it's kind of gone. It's forgotten, and you don't know any reaction. And I think I wanted that reaction. I wanted to see the love or hate and the feedback from people, and this was that formula to get there.
Absolutely. And it's been really interesting, sort of, from that time, seeing the look and the brand of Brew evolve. You've mentioned once or twice just there that you've had a background designing for other brands and for other watch brands. Out of interest, who can you sort of say who that was for, or what sort of you
Yeah.
learnt in that sort of working for other people phase?
Felix, that's such a good question. I guess I could start with my parents, especially my father, always said, don't ever get into the jewelry or watch industry because there's no money to ever be made. So that's what he told me in school. He works for Tiffany's as a jeweler, and his fathers were uh, jewelry designers for Cartier. So he had enough experience to say, don't ever get into this space. Well, lo and behold, my first internship was at Movado, the Movado Group.
Cool.
So, as a young person out of college, university, you you say, "Wow, I've got an internship," and you're running with it, not knowing if this is the end all be all. But I was fortunate because that was such a good experience. Not just the work of. I'll tell you what I did there, but it was the people in that corporate atmosphere that were very warm. They were intelligent, very sharp, and they really enjoyed the industry. So you know how it is. Once you're in the watch industry, the enjoyment is contagious.
Yep.
And as an intern, they actually gave me great responsibilities to work on technical specs, talk to suppliers, test out prototypes, and really dial in what it takes to put together a watch. Because I studied industrial design, basically product design. They put me in the hot seat. They really kind of put that trust in me to work on these projects with them. But that was just the first stage,
Yep.
and that's just 6 months. 6 months of Movado,
Uh-huh.
and then the next stage, which was more mass market watches, like let's just say licenses for like Crayola, Jessica Simpson, Coleman outdoor watches.
Cool.
So they're funky, and they're not high end, but they have these personalities to them. So you're really honing in on the character of a watch. But this place, it's very much you got to grind to get the designs right, because not only are you're getting a brief, but you have to come up with the concepts. You create it. You're doing these illustrations that are photorealistic. You're also speaking to vendors to get the prices right, get the specs correct, and then after
Yep.
everything is confirmed, you're meeting with the buyers from these stores, whether it's Nordstrom's, Macy's, J.C. Penney, and as a designer, I'm there in a boardroom selling them, "Hey, this is the watch you should buy because X, Y, and Z makes sense for your brand, your license."
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And look, before we dive too far down the path of Brew Watches, we should probably get you to describe the brand in your own words. Obviously, the name and the start of this conversation indicates some strong ties with coffee. But tell us about Brew Watch Company or Brew Watch Co. and sort of what it stands for and what the designs sort of stand for.
Yeah, good question, Andy. I wanted the ethos to always be around your time over coffee, like that philosophy,
Uh huh.
a certain place and time. But I didn't want to be too much on the nose. I didn't want it to be like coffee time watches. I wanted to create a brand that was open ended. You don't even have to enjoy coffee to enjoy the watch. And so that was the fine line I wanted to play with. And I'll tell you, over the year, now it's 7 years, over the years, your style evolves. And before you know it, you're in this channel, a groove that you've created. You don't even realize it. It happens so slowly that I would say now it's become this retro vintage style. It's gotten much more compact with its dimensions. Of course, it's always affordable. That was like my mantra. I always wanted people to feel included, never intimidated, almost novel in a way. So you can enjoy this. It can be nostalgic. And if you look close, you'll notice subtle hints of the coffee bean, the espresso vented cutouts. Some even have espresso shot timers. So if you ask, it's there, like little clever details. But if you're not interested, you can just enjoy it from a design perspective. And then hopefully there's something there that speaks to you.
Yeah, 100%. And even the name Brew, that's sort of like a bit of an insider reference. Like if you're thinking coffee, it's obviously there, but it's not linked to it explicitly. One other thing that I think about Brew Coffee is of that time, that sort of 2015, 2016, you were around at that peak Instagram watch community sort of phase, and you really rode that wave. What was that like, and is that sort of changing now?
And that's another great point you're bringing up. There's so many factors that could absolutely make or break the opportunity of where we are today. I would say social media had a huge influence on the success because as a one-man band back then, the reach I had was very short. I had New York City, which is one of the very great hubs of the watch industry, but I could never extend past that on my own 2 feet. So social media definitely gave me great leverage.
Sure.
But the community here, I can't ever forget. I mean, I've got fantastic folks from Red Bar, tons of good press. I mean, everybody that's in journalism, at least locally here, was very supportive of sharing the brand. And it was a mix of, I think they enjoyed my watches and they enjoyed the journey. It was almost like, this is interesting now. We're excited to help and see where this can go. Like back then, brands were popping up actually very often. It was becoming a thing. Crowdfunding was at an all-time high. Social media was at an all-time high. And people were just like excited to share. It was like they would do anything for the like. They would do anything to share and be a part of some journey. Whereas now, if you come in, it's a bit more saturated, of course. And so many people have done it. Not that watches were brand new 7 years ago, but the digital space it's become a little bit more flooded, that you have to do something to have a louder voice these days. It's not, I wouldn't say I had it easy, but I would say I had an advantage starting 7 years ago versus today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I think back to the time, I bumped into New York and you had the espresso machine set up and you were making the coffees, and it was sort of weaved into the part of the brand that you were building. And I think about this often because I look at your account, I look at the watches, and look at where your brand is now, and I kind of think this really there's a reason that you're still around and you're still making watches, and I kind of group you with honestly a few of the other people that were at the fair, like Jason from Helios. There's another great example of sort of a really early micro brand who was able to kind of keep going past, whether it was that first or second Kickstarter, or first hype your watch on social media, and you kind of really build it into a business. And I think, my conclusion is that it's comes down to you and your sort of networking, and the passion that you had is really clear. I mean, how many of these micro brands or potential brands do you see popping up online that are pretty naff? They look for sort of any relevancy or any tie-in to a cause or to the brand name, whereas you sort of and you answered it before, have started out with good intentions. So how important has networking and sort of investing that time in the community and sort of in the industry at such a young age been to your success?
Oh, it's 100%. I wouldn't be anything without the support of the community. That's why they always say, take care of each person one by one. You can't leave any person behind. Any ideas, any suggestions, always be very open-minded to listen and work with people. I'll tell you, it hasn't been easy because now this is year 7. The things that people don't see, it has its ebbs and flows. A much more of a roller coaster ride in the first 3 years. But after that, when it does gain traction, um, I would say everybody knows everybody in the watch industry, and it's so tightly woven together. I think everybody enjoys it so much they want to keep it as a clean, safe, comfortable environment. And I think we all kind of have a duty to ensure that. So if somebody comes in, it's almost like weeding out the bad guys. If somebody comes in with ill intentions, we can kind of sense it, and then before you know it, everybody's like, yeah, it's not a good one. Um, and so an example of that might be like a brand coming in to make a quick buck on like some homage piece. You would sense it and be like, I don't want to write about this because it seems like they're not in it for the right reasons. And so to be frank, I think when I came in, I didn't have the most perfect watch. I was still new. I was learning. But I think people knew my intentions were good, as you mentioned, that they kind of gave me a shot. I think they sensed that I was there with good intentions, but I had room to grow. I didn't come out with the perfect watch the first time, but there was room to evolve, and I feel like they gave me the opportunity to.
On those intentions and that sort of, you mentioned a few times about sort of um, rocky time in those first early years of business. You're now in year 7. I want to know very specifically what piece of advice you would tell yourself back in year 1 if you had a one-time single-use time-traveling text message. So it's not like a whole TED talk. I just want a nugget of information.
This is a great question, but you know why it's impossible to answer this? Even if I told myself the answer would be planning ahead. But here's the caveat. You can't plan ahead because you don't know what's going to be accepted yet. You have no credibility. People have never heard of you yet. And you don't know if that watch is a one-hit wonder or if it's an absolute failure. So it takes time over the years to see what are people attracted to, and has my credibility grown to a point where, to be frank, people would spend a little bit more, if at all, to make a purchase. So even in the first 3 years, I could say you need to plan ahead. I could say how much money I needed, how much time, but without the experience of trial and error to get the designs correct, to get the feedback, and of course, most importantly, the credibility, not just from press, but people actually buying and wearing and sharing your watches. It's impossible to do it without that trial and error. I would say at least the first 3 years.
Yeah, well, building a brand isn't an overnight thing, as sort of we discovered, and despite social media, it takes that investment. Jonathan, you really caught our attention a couple of weeks ago with the metric chronograph, the banger of a watch. Website says it's sold out. Tell us what this watch was about. Tell us what this watch is about, and I guess we're expecting the reception that it received. I saw some really great write-ups, including Hodinkee, which is obviously a good sign. Explain yourself.
Man, I'll tell you, even though it's year 7, it's still such a roll of the dice each time. And I've talked to people. Yep. I would say like a Max Booster type would say to you, only put out something that you're so into you would wear yourself, because there's no way other people are going to follow suit unless you're obsessed with the product yourself. And I feel as though this latest watch is something that, if it wasn't Brew, if you tied it into some vintage, I don't know, brand or company, it's something that I would buy. And
sorry about that.
I was like, this is so romantic. Where's this music coming from? But the obsession and confidence became, what would I buy? What would I wear? But of course, most importantly, what makes most sense for the family of designs that already exist. So something I've noticed is, of course, naturally I have this cushioned square silhouette. and that has this TV retro 70s styling to it. But I didn't want to dismiss and forget it. So I knew immediately, I had to make that decision, stay with that silhouette, but go more compact. That speaks not just to that vintage era, but it allows more wearability. And I think everyone is, or I would hope so, tailoring their watch sizes down, because for me, at least, this is my personal wearing approach, is I like something that's a little bit more compact or smaller on the wrist. It's easier to wear every day, less obtrusive. And especially these days, everybody's saying, make a ladies' watch, make a men's watch. I'm not looking for, again, a one-hit wonder, but if more people can wear it, as a designer, industrial designer, that's a success. You're working on the ergonomics and size dimensions to create easy wearability. But in terms of the design, that was something in scale, making it thin, making it feel substantial, 3 dimension. Um, I've worked on watches in the past where it's just pad printed, and there's a level of dimension there, whether it's color, the brushing, and pushers, components, etc. But on the metric, it has a lot going on when you have different subdials, applied index markers, they're faceted, so you're getting all these different lighting. I mean, there's a lot going on. And I think as I evolve design to design, I'm trying to make them smarter, more substantial, at least in the value perception. Like people say, oh, I feel like I'm getting a lot. And so I'm trying to offer as much as I possibly can, still in that attainable market. And I think that also adds value for why somebody would be interested or would approach me.
Yeah, I think that really talks a lot about your sort of evolution as a watch designer, or Brew's evolution, perhaps. One thing I find most interesting about the journey of your brand is that you did start off really strong with that television, sort of 70s case shape. How many times did you, let me rephrase that. It must have, I can only imagine the sort of internal tensions that you might have just gone, I should just do a round diver. But I really respect that you stayed with that distinctive shape and have evolved it. Can you sort of talk about that decision and how that ended up with a watch like the Metric?
Yeah, the reason I actually never went round before I even started Brew, one of my fellow designers, when I was working for licensed brands, those character watches, very fun. The designer that sat next to me always said to us, if you're going to come out of the gate strong and you have a silhouette like everyone else, it becomes just another watch. There's nothing really significantly special about it. And so he really instilled the idea of a really good silhouette goes a long way. And then of course there's all the examples of like your big name watches, whether it's in Speedmaster, Rolex, like you can spot it without even seeing the name. And that was something he said, if I remove the label on your watch, will I still recognize your brand? And he said, if you get to that point, that recognition is so strong and it's just instilled in people that it's not that you've made it, but it's a very good benchmark to be. And so it wasn't squared to just be different, but it was squared to pack a big punch, to come out the gates with something. Although I'll say that first watch I did was like 43, 44 millimeters. Definitely tailored it down a bit to like the 39, 38 range now.
I think that was the time though, right? Like everything, still the mid 2014, 2015, everything was like peak diameter, because that was the way that the trends were going, and then it's come back down. So yeah, can't blame yourself for starting off a bit chunkier. So I mean, look, the Metric is a really nice watch, and you've done color before on the rest of your catalog. Like if I'm on the website, there's colorful dials, but this seems to bring in probably the most color since the Technicolor piece you did a little while ago. But this feels like the right balance of the nostalgic sort of color palette that we see, brands reissuing, a nice size, a different sort of case that you mentioned, that integrated bracelet. And we've got plenty of questions around the nitty gritty stuff of building a watch. But I'm just curious. So I'm on the website, and really there's like 3 watches for sale. How are you running the business? Is this a pre-order model? Is this are they limited editions that have sold out? How are you sort of facilitating, production as obviously, a smaller independent brand?
Yeah, good question. I don't like to do pre-order so much unless I have the watches in hand. There's a few reasons I do that. One, I like to have the confidence that if I'm going to take someone's money, that I can back it, and I know the product it's right there on the shelf. We're going to prepare it, and they'll have it in 1-2 weeks. The worst thing I would ever want to do is take someone's money, and the watch is still being stamped and milled out. Like, that feels uncomfortable for me. Even though I know, like, I have a great supply chain, I would not take a person's money that early. And right now, when you go to the website, everything is sold out. And the reason is the demand for watches, especially I would say my brand, my price point that I could speak about, has been extremely high. So it's not that I'm making thousands of watches. I'm making a decent amount, and I'll say they still have sold very fast and more than I would have forecasted. But I'm doing my best to resupply and have a generally good shopping experience. Like, by late October, early November, everything will be available again. But here's the thing. One rule of thumb that I learned from other companies was never oversupply and just hope that it will come. People will buy it. Now, on the other hand, you don't want to be so short stocked that people are like, are you still in business? So there's a very fine line of forecasting. But how do you forecast under COVID really did put people home, and shopping did increase dramatically, tenfold. And I never could have planned for this. I still went very conservative with my numbers. And I'm still taking that approach with some mild, fluctuations on, okay, there's an increase, make more X, Y, and Z. But after this, I'm going to just have a full shop full of every design available at any time, because although, okay, limited editions definitely give people that FOMO effect. Okay, let me get it. Even I fall for it. I do believe it would be a generally nice experience to go to a shop and say, hey, I want to get this for my brother. It's his birthday next week. That there's some comfort and confidence in that. And that's the shopping experience I want to give to people. I'm not on this whole limited edition. It's gone forever. That's the watch industry is notorious for, and there's good reason for it. I think there's a better experience to have availability and work from there.
Yeah, I think that's a really relevant point right now. And you've talked about customer expectation and customer experience. I think that's a conversation that is happening with a lot of brands at the moment. I think maybe some younger brands out there, they're sort of really struggling with that balance of managing customer expectations. How do you do it? Like, in terms of, when do you release information? When do you change the order model, any of that sort of stuff? How do you make it work?
Typically, I'll have my watch design. It takes 6 to 8 months to get it ready from prototype to production. So that's a 6 to 8 month timeline.
Sure.
But once I have that final production piece in hand, I'll typically share it with specific press. And then I take all my own lifestyle photography, and I'll have those stock images ready to share with them as well. However, the latest metric watch, I wasn't supposed to release that for like another month. Like, I had it ready, but I wanted to take my time and inform different press. But I hosted this gallery in New York City. Of course, I wanted to take the opportunity to showcase it. And then everybody started taking photos of the metric with their cell phone. I said to myself, oh no, the first images that are going to go out are going to be these iPhone shots. So I pulled some of my best glamour shots, and I said, you know what? Let's do like a pre-order for 2 weeks. I have them ready. I just need to prepare them, package them. Let's just post it. And it was very much an instant drop. Put it out there. And I was worried. I said, this is so unprofessional, unplanned. This is going to be a disaster. And it sold faster than any other watch I've ever put out. So unplanned. That's so against the rules, so to speak, for any company or brand. But it went well.
Just a bad boy. Caution into the wind. No, I love it. And I think the natural follow-up to that is sort of, you've got customers and, smaller operation, you're very, invested in it's a massive part of your life. How do you separate yourself from the brand?
That's a great question too. As much as this is my baby, my design, I know it inside and out and A to Z any day of the week. I do remind myself to never take it too personal. And there's many reasons for that. When you're doing customer service, you take care of everybody. You don't think so much, this is the product, the value. No, that person matters. That one person, whether they're happy or upset, they have to leave with their expectations exceeded every time. So I never take anything personal. I always keep myself removed, almost as if, what would the experience be that I would want or expect? Now it's a lot for one person, and my name is on it, and I've done that because I wanted to build this credibility and confidence that people know, hey, this is not just another factory or group of 100 people just putting out some shoddy product. That there's somebody like really passionate that loves this product, that you're getting it. It's been hands-on, tested, tried, designed, and really thoroughly considered. That's what you're getting. And that's why I put my name on it, so people are reassured. However, as it does grow, and we're kind of getting to that cap now where it's grown quite a bit. I'm actually looking at and putting together a team, extending an office where I can bring people in and work, because now I'll tell you, every morning I wake up and the emails, we could have 200 emails in one morning, and I've never had this in my life. But the same rule applies, whether it was 20 or 200 emails. Every single person, whether it's the most simple or complicated message, they have to leave informed, happy, and just confident that, and the watch is not expensive, but confident that whatever purchase that they make with their money, it's well spent. And watches are extremely personal, that if and when they do have it on their wrist one day, it leaves them feeling good, because one bad experience can really, tarnish the way you feel about that product and the company. So it's a never ending cycle of doing my best. And hopefully I can bring others on board to extend this experience to people.
Love it.
Yeah, that's an exciting time about, sort of growing and, conquering that email inbox once and for all. One thing I want to talk about specifically around this metric, the dial, I think, has got a lot of the attention, especially on that retro one, because it's great. I had some very specific thoughts when I first saw it, I think, on Instagram. I thought of two words, Speed Sonic and lobster. The bracelet on that watch is really, really impressive. I think it's integrated, it's cool, it fits in with the shape. It's a tie back to like those great sort of 70s Speedmaster and Tissot watches, but also it's on a watch that costs under $400 US. How do you make a watch bracelet that is unique at that sort of price point?
Yeah, good question. This bracelet had to be this way for the main reason of matching the case. So if you see the case, it's chamfered, and that hard polished edge, if it flowed into, let's just say, a flat linked, very 90-degree bracelet, it would feel so interrupted and ugly and out of place. It would make us both nauseous. And it was also a bracelet that was an extension from a previous model I made. So I did that flat link bracelet on a previous model. And something I've learned over time is you want to keep the family familiar of your design essence. And so I've done this bracelet in the past, but I never had it chamfered and polished on the edges like this. So that was one thing. I wanted to have that extension, but also a hard taper. Specifically, and this is going to sound odd, but it is what it is. I love Philips auction watches. They're old vintage watches. And the way that they actually lay out their watches, Even if it's on a bracelet, they'll remove the pin and they'll lay it out flat. Those old watches, 60s, 70s, the tapers are ridiculous, but nice.
Yeah.
And they're elegant. They're sexy, just like you look at the curves on a car. And there's something special about that. And I said, why don't people do that these days? Naturally, it's the cost. And to your question, how do you make it for that cost? You just don't have a big margin. So the business model that, we don't talk about because it's not as luxurious is, you get less margin. So the watch is very expensive to make. And there are more links, which makes more tooling costs, because for each link to be that different,
it's tooling.
The first 5-6 links are all separate tooling, all hand finished and polished. It adds a significant cost versus, let's just say, a flat, straight bracelet or band. But you know what? My mantra is always, even if my margins are small, the more people that are wearing and enjoying your watch, and it's not easy. It only takes one bad person to have a terrible experience for you to go under. Then I think that is the formula for success, at least for a startup. And so I'm trying to over deliver the product for its price point. And, people are coming from me on all sides saying, John, charge more. But, I'm taking a hit on this one.
And I love that. And that's where the passion comes into it. I guess, you've just said at the price point. So the 350 to call it 400 and 525 USD. So, well and truly under that sub $1,000 mark. I'm really curious to see to hear who the Brew Watch customer is, because I have a suspicion that, and if I was to look at it, it's sort of, an entry level, it's a micro brand. It's probably something for, the people that I would see buying your watches are, that subcategory of watch enthusiasts that really love, collecting independence, right? And micro brands. And that's a huge sort of category of the watch market, or people new to watches that see it and they go, they really like it. I look at the metric, and I look at that as a watch that really appeals to the watch enthusiast community, which is probably why it sold out in record time, and probably why it got, mainstream watch media coverage, is because it's actually it's one of those pieces that it strikes all the right notes. And, if you have a Rolex, if you have Patek, if you have an AP, like, this is a piece that you would grab because it would fit really well in those sort of really serious watch collections. Was that your intention?
When I design it, the things I really think about are, it sounds selfish, what would I wear the most? And what would be most widely accepted? So I'm trying to trigger nostalgic feeling. But in doing so, that nostalgic vintage design, it does gravitate towards those independent collectors. And not to say, if you're buying, X, Y, and Z lower tier brands, that you're not worthwhile or valuable client, but there's a bit of pride when you see, as you said, they might have Pateks, or I've seen people that have MB&Fs or like really high end independent, and I see them purchase my watch. And not to say I don't think they should get it, but I'm like, this is in a completely different wheelhouse. What is it? I have to ask myself. I try to deconstruct these experiences. What is it about my own watch that would make you purchase and wear it when you have something already so substantial? And this is it. It's because I'm confident enough to be different, but there is a bit of familiarity. It's that 50-50 split. It's part familiar. It gives you, let's just say, that Omega or some 70s vibe. So you feel comfortable. It's bringing that nostalgic. But the other part, whether it's the big eye, the colors, the silhouette, finishing, etc., the unique part, that's the hardest part to get, is that 50-50 split. And I think, for myself at least, that was the winning factors of that balance. Those ingredients between familiar and unique. I never, ever, ever want to be in the ballpark of, this reminds me of it looks just like and somebody puts it side by side and it's identical. For me, that would feel like a failure. Like, you just copied something. Why are you spending an entire year on one design if you're just going to copy it? I could do that over one coffee. But there are like actual triggers, like the size, the layout, proportions, even the finishing. Yeah, it all triggers an emotional, nostalgic, familiar response that I think is really powerful. And I think successful designers, not saying that I'm even there yet, know how to get to that point very well. It's a balance.
Yeah, that's a really, I think, a really true and interesting sort of look into the process of creating something and putting it out there into the world. Which I've got a follow up question, and it's, I'm sure you've had it before, and it's sort of the expected one. The metric is a great watch. It's the sort of the darling of the internet of the last few months. It's got some great coverage. How do you follow up that?
I'm actually going through my head right now. Like, what am I working on?
Just tell us. Just verbal.
Yeah.
Just.
I would say being as different as possible is the recipe for success in the watches. Because even if it's a complete failure, and you're making noise, that noise, whether it sells or not, will follow you, and you'll have momentum to work off of. So let me think, because I'm working on a few things right now. The next design. Oh, okay. Yeah. So for instance, I'm staying in the same design family, but I'm going ultra funk. I'm doing this next design where it's going to be a love hate, very novel product. People are going to look at the colors and say, "What the hell are you thinking?" But you know what? It's still going to fit within the same design family. I can say, to be honest, it's not going to be some in-house movement. I'm not a brand about the movement. Of course, it's a solid Seiko movement, and that will always be true for the most part. Whether it's Seiko or the next. But I don't think you asked about the brew customer. They're not there to lift the hood and see what's the engine. I think there's a confidence in, okay, he worked with Seiko, but this is a design. The silhouette, how it feels, is the most important part. So the next watch, for instance, that I'm working on, the colors are super funky. The hands are all actually extremely custom. They've never been done before. And the story and the packaging has so much funk and flair and speaks to a specific era. I even want to launch it in New York, if pending the climate, in a really fun way. And one thing I've learned how to do, business will always be business. Keep a roof over your head, and put the watches out. Remove myself from the business money side, and say to yourself, if you could have one last hurrah, what would it be like? And so my next design has so much fun and flair. And I get this confidence from people like Max Booser that say, like, if you're going to enter this industry and you're not enjoying it and you're not adding anything really new, then what are you really doing? And I'll tell you, so now this is year 7. I feel like my confidence has gotten really high to do what I really enjoy, but I'm still trying to be smart about it. Everything has to have a reason for the silhouette, the colors, and even the hands. The story speaks to a specific era. Even the naming, it's an entire ecosystem in one darn watch. So, I can't say everything because it's very much like on the nose if I told you.
Yeah.
But if anything, I could just say I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it's very different, and there's nothing like it.
I love it. I love it. Well, you sort of mentioned Max Buser a few times. We've had on the show a little bit earlier this year. He's famous for his friends. What I want to know is who and what is your dream collaboration? I don't think you've ever done one, but if anyone would tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, let's do a watch together," who is it and why?
It's a great question.
Doesn't have to be a watch brand. It can be media. It can be a
sports team,
future ambassador.
No, whether
coffee
it's
company.
like, yeah, actually, I reached out to a coffee company in the past. It was like my 4th year in, and I'll tell you, I had a full watch designed for this espresso machine company, and at the end of the conversation, they said, "We don't know if we can go forward with this because we sell espresso machines, not watches. So, thank you, but I said, fair enough. I get it. I'm a young guy. When you see one person that says like, this is my company, there's a little bit of fear to invest. And I get it.
Yeah.
But I love cars as well. So when I look at like old Porsches, I love the colorations, the interiors. They're pretty cool. Like you look at an old Singer designed Porsche, the interior, the fabrics, like they're really funky, cool stuff. I mean, you've got your Singer watches as well. So yeah, whether it's like a Schwinn bike or an old Porsche, like a Schwinn brand, a Porsche brand, a bit of like that funky flair from the past would be interesting as a spin-off on a watch.
Yeah, that's Schwinn actually is a really good shout. I think they've got the curves as well, which I sort of think fits in nicely into your design language. Speaking of other things that we might enjoy, air-cooled Porsches, old-school bikes, do you have any, as we wrap up, any recommendations for people listening that might be beyond the world of watches? Maybe something you've been watching or reading or, consuming in one way or another?
Yeah, so I enjoy cars and motorcycles just as much as the watches. I mean, you got to give yourself a little bit of a balance between all of the. I mean, we look at watches 99.9% of the time when we wake up and go to sleep. Um, I have an '04 911 Carrera, and it's
nice.
that weekend rider. It's mint. It's real clean. And then I just had a Ducati. It's a V2 Panigale, so it's like super bike. Yeah, I try to have a little bit of everything. So like that nice cruise, and then that absolute speed demon. But I'm actually going to remove myself from both of these. I'm going to sell both of these. And then, these old Thruxton cafe racers have really been calling to me, and I think they're super cool. Like an old Ducati Scrambler, and if anybody has any tips about what they've enjoyed, I mean, please message me. But I'm in the market for like a nice cafe racer.
I love it. It's a good recommendation. I'm sure we have a few listeners that are into their two-wheeled friends, their bikes. Couple of enthusiasts on the channel. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining Felix and I. It's been an absolute treat to have you call in from New York, and we're really excited to see the follow-up for the metric because it's got to be good.
Sounds funky.
Thank you so much, guys.
It's our pleasure. Well, that was a fantastic opportunity to talk to Jonathan. What a great guy! Exciting to see the direction that Brew Watches has been taking. Yeah, just really happy when good people succeed, Felix. Look, as always, 5-star reviews are appreciated. Make sure you're emailing us, otthepodcast@gmail.com. Felix, our Instagram handle is
Instagram at ot.podcast. And and just, stay tuned to the Discord for that sort of first hints of our top secret project.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's go, Andy. I've got other stuff to do on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, better things to do. And as Felix said, Discord is the place to be. Top secret projects galore. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Awesome.